Hello and welcome to the next episode of Inclusion by Design. I'm your host, Uma Chatterjee. In this podcast, we talk about social inclusion, not as a matter of charity, but as a matter of justice. I meet with several social change makers who are continuously challenging stereotypes, fighting stigma, and reimagining belonging. Our guest today is Mr. Sabir Ahmed. He is the founder of the initiative called Know Your Neighbor in Calcutta. Together with Sabir, we will unpack the concept of social inclusion, not only in theory, but in practice and everyday living. Hi, Sabir.
Hi.
Welcome to Inclusion by Design, and thank you.
Thank you very much to you for this kind invitation, and we had a long association, and it's a privilege to be back here.
I'm so excited to have this conversation today because what we are going to be talking about today, many people talk about it, know about it. They discuss in their drawing rooms. They discuss they discuss amongst friends. They discuss at workspaces. But, it's all done with a matter of hesitation. It's a matter of kitna bolu, how much to say, should I say this, how will I be perceived? So without creating any more suspense, I would request you to introduce yourself, Sabir, and the initiative Know Your Neighbor.
As you more rightly said that, I'm a researcher, development activist, for more than, almost 20 years. Basically, I associate myself as a researcher, researching on the social issues and research put into the action, how we use the research for the action. So research for action. One particular area I have been, doing research on the aspect of the minority living in West Bengal or India. I was, actually struck by a phrase called living together, but living together separately. This is the title of the one chapter. So I read that article, and so it's true for the Calcutta also. It's a big city, and a city, it could have been named Alinagar at one point of time if Sirajuddaulah would not have defeated in that time. But after the partition, how city became segregated. Kolkata is at one time it was very inclusive in nature. We know each other more closely by its design. So what is the design? If you see, if I was going through doing a research on mosque in Kolkata, so I found every ward has at least one mosque. Even the South Calcutta. But what has partition done? Partition had segregated Muslim from South Calcutta to Kidipur, Mominpur, from Pak Sarkar, Raja Bazaar. So it became, we are living together in the same city, but we don't know each other. So when I was a part of one research called Living Relative Muslim in Bengal, many of my friends who are teaching in a university or in a journalist for several years had never visited those areas. I say, what is the reason why you're not been to the materials, for example? Do you know recording?
Where are these friends living?
They are in the city in Kolkata, but never visited, for example, Metro Bruj. I said, do you need passport to visit those places? They said no. So why? What is the reason? So I started, searching the root cause. That was personal journey. I say, because they don't have a friend on those area, neither in the school nor in the workplace or anywhere. They don't know somebody who's
Living in those areas.
From our side also, I was grown up in a place called Jagare Street. I see from my father or the uncles or family member, etc., they have also never visited certain part of the city. They never required that, unless two stations they know. Maybe you sometimes occasionally to Bodihart, but their world was that part. So even within this para, I remember there is a I recover, almost, when I was 30, 35, there is a Jamindar house in Jakaria Street, Bodon Chadrai State, Motilal Lal Silvari, but the doors were never open for us. I used to imagine from my childhood, it could be a museum because from outside I could see numerous, statues are installed and it's a beautiful house, but I was never allowed to inside. But I could see during Durga Puja, they are open, but I never had courage to go inside. So that's, that belief, the living together separately, that's the belief. And I started searching the reason. So that's why the phrase, came into being, know your neighbor, what. Uh, so that's beginning. So I say, how I'll start? I say, why don't you come to Jakaresti? Let's, visit some of the places like Napoda Masjid. You heard about him, but you've never been to that. And if you're a woman, there is again an hesitation that they will not allow. But contrary to that belief, they welcomed us. They, 10 years ago, with the first walk, neighborhood walk, we don't call it heritage walk because purpose was to know your neighbor, what is there, and then on the top of the minaret you could see the city, the beautiful city from the mosque, and the women. They say
So women are allowed.
women, and that too not from the Muslim community. All are from the different communities. They gather. They're teaching there in universities, college, journalists. So that was the beginning of that. So breaking the myth, the certain layer of myths. So when I started, what are the, then we started talking about what are the myth. So what are the myth? Muslim men, they marry 4 times, 4 wives are there, lucky. Then they have 10 children. Yeah, at some point, the number of children was like when I started doing research in Murshidabad, for example, I was feel very, awkward when they said in Murshidabad, in the family roster, you have to write number of 20 peoples. That was just a big family 20 years ago because joint family, but they used to ridicule that. But things had changed. Both you can see from the census data, etc. Even in the Murshidabad, there is a average household member is 3, 4 kind of things. Many things have changed, but that's remain in the mind. That is the myth. Number one myth: they marry more than one women. There are many children, and they don't allow women to study. They send their children to madrasa. But factually, when I started collecting data, this is not matching. See, even such a committee report said only merely less than 4% Muslim families send their children to madrasa. And in West Bengal, madrasa system is completely different. 640 madrasa is governed by the West Bengal Madrasa Board. They follow like similar to the Madhyamik Board. Only 2 subjects, Islamic and Arabic, is there. And on the top of it, about about 2 to 3% non-Muslim also study in madrasa in Bengal. This is a unique part to me. But there is no information about such. Even the Calcutta Madrasa was started much before the Presidency University College. So education, a lot of taboo about the, especially about doing. Even you see, like last 10 years, how women in Bengal had outnumbered boys among the Muslim community. And the gap is widening now.
Outnumber meaning?
Outnumber means girls are studying more than the boys. But this information was not there. They say you don't send your women, your girls, your daughter to the school systems, college system. But that's again a myth. And the incident of talaq, is there, but not that alarming as compared to the divorce rate. It's same almost. So more you educated, more you ember, you exercise your right to, divorce, your right to be separated. So that we and all madrasa produce terrorists. So there is no link between madrasa and producing terrorists. So we jot down what are the myth and reality. And like for example, people love to associate Muslim with the biryani. So I thought, do you think I always carry biryani in bag? Whenever it was me, you said biryani kawe khabi. So I say biryani in a Bengali Muslim halim biryani is not that stable. I love eat fish, from very childhood. Biryani and halim came later in our life, So and now, so that kind of, even I was reading Shankho Ghosh, who is reading 30 years ago that I am passing the Central Avenue, and there is a big festival. City does not know. He is talking about the Ramzan Bazaar. Now it's become, because of the vlogger, it's become a happening place. He's writing very beautifully. And from there, how ignorance led to the kind of exclusion, led to the violence we're facing, because a lot of are raised to certain with alienation. So how community feel, and a Muslim in Bengal are associated that you speak in Urdu. I am not well versed in Urdu. Even Roop may be know much more Urdu words because he grown up in the Republic area better than me. How does, and I don't have that kind of expertise on Urdu. maybe some family members because of their, but not all. Sometimes seeing my name, they started talking in Hindi, in a bad Hindi, worse than me. So like, I remember somebody, he's no picking my blood, and everybody is somebody here, etc. But when my name comes, he say, Sabir bhaiya aiye. I'm like, why you speaking even Hindi? Even I face my only son studying Don Bosco, say, and he's a great orator, speak Bangla well, recite Bengali poem. So how you recite so brilliantly? Sometimes people ask me, why you write in Ahmedabad? How your Bangla is too good? So this still haunts me. Even taxi driver thinks as a Bangladeshi and charge more for fare to go moving forward. So these actually lack of information, ignorance of it particularly, because the design of the cities now is a segregated data. If you go to it's one of the segregated city, like ST Muslims are not living closely with each other in the city. It is because of the partition. But at some time, in Gauri Kishore Ghosh is writing that I don't have to teach my child about 5 time namaz because we have grown up in an area. We can hear the azan. We know what is Mohram. My child would not say Happy Mohram. It was people become so oversensitive that they started sending Happy Mohram. But Mohram is not the occasion to celebrate, it's a morning session. So that was, areas where we started working, building lot of audiovisual poster and work followed by the community discussion. So that was the beginning, and we organized, and initially it was open for all kind of people. Then we started with a young, especially the college student, because they are the uh, reader of consumer of WhatsApp University. So they started believing, because like the last 5 years, the vital information became beyond the paywall. You have to pay to read the all
Most
prominent
important.
newspaper, and misinformation is readily available. So our role is to and that's lead us to work on the data. So how I use data innovatively to break this myth.
What really struck me, I mean, how such personal experiences as a child, as a young person, as an adult that you've gone through, which actually propelled you, which pushed you to start this initiative. So, how much of the personal experiences are a part of this? So, that's really very warm to, it makes me feel very warm, Sabir. Many a times we join movements and start initiatives which everybody else is doing, and how does my personal life relate to this? I really like the way you brought in your story. So one of the things that you said is that there are many silent and loud stereotypes and myths about this community. Before we go on to deepen the conversation, if there were a scale called the alienation scale, the group that you're talking about, the marginalized group that you're talking about, what is your sensing of the kind of the alienation, disconnection, discrimination, stigmatization that this group faces? If you had to score between 0 and 10, what would be an alienation rating?
I, I am perpetually optimistic person and also love desegregating things.
Okay.
So if I aggregate, result will be different. But if we desegregate, for example, I'm talking of the rural Bengal.
Okay. Yeah.
So where in terms of the food, in terms of the culture, in terms of the way they talk, you'll find more similarity among the different communities. So you don't feel I'm segregated. My I in rural Bengal, what you find that after iftar, people will have the muri and chola. You'll not find anywhere in the world a Bengali way of breaking the fast. So you never feel iron, from the, and they're bathing in the same pond, one Brahmin is going for the puja, but in the same pond. Muslim, pious Muslim is using the same water for going for the namaz. So we are actually, this is in Bengal context, it's called, I was also motivated by one text by Hindu Musalman Jukto Sadhana by Khitimon Sen, how actually we have contributed each other in Indian context. So I see in rural Bengal, you'll see, although it's now breaking that myth also, the rise of this Hindutva rise has make introductory area. If you see the urban area, the segregation, feeling of exclusion, deprivation of services. So, how I feel like when I'm going to the college, school, university, I see only four Muslims are in a more in premier institute, you will feel more excluded.
Ah, okay.
And even the workplaces, say for example, I used to work in on NGOs, so they are celebrating, for example, big festival like Durga Puja or any other Saraswati Puja, for example. But there is no iftar party or there is no the Eid celebration. Although sometimes the so-called beneficiaries overwhelmingly Muslims, they're the victims sometimes. How we overlooked how we overlooked, we are not sensitive, we must also, if there is a Saraswati Puja, there is no harm in celebration, you all can do celebrate. But what if, Eid days, they become sad, they are remembering their, family, like they have coming from the very different circumstances, and there is no celebration of the Eid in those NGO runs, those so-called progressive, etc. So I've seen, experienced that kind of thing. So,
So what you're saying is actually in rural communities, the alienation is much lesser.
Lesser,
The segregation is lesser. And in urban communities, and the higher we go into more premium spaces, or the alienation and disconnection becomes more.
yeah. So because of the different commonalities, in terms of the food, race, like in dress, for example, in rural area, Muslim women prefer saris. And it's common, it's we united by the wearing sari, and there's no Islamic connection with that. So influenced by the local culture. So I feel, I travel extensively to the rural area. So I feel the feeling of alienation in cities is much more pronounced as compared to. Uh, but if you ask me to rate, still I'm optimistic. After the independence, although the country was divided based on religion, still there is always hope. I was just seeing, and there was a scope for articulation of your problem. For example, you must have heard about this film Garam Hawa. How that depicted the dilemma of partisan or some wants to go back. Although there is a opposition even from that time, the very prominent nationalist Hindu leaders, but they allow to release that feeling, discuss that, they're moved by that, although things are changing. But I think as a democratic space, India is much more as compared to like the neighboring countries. So I'll give, in terms of the feeling, segregation is six, if we combine both, keeping,
Okay. Um, so if I were to ask you to share a personal or an organizational story where you witnessed the transformative power of inclusion, where you saw what inclusion by design, by intent, by commitment, where you saw this happening, and there was a transformation in the way the person has grown or experienced. If you can share a story.
Some anecdotes, for example, uh, if we talk, we discuss, sit together, it's called associational bonds, like the Para.
Huh.
So these associational bonds actually break certain stereotypes, etc. But when we started a program, Dosti Ki Iftari, who had never attended a iftar, so invited, it's 10 years during COVID, you stopped. But so what happens? people were spreading the food plates in front of you, and they started picking the foods. No, sarbat pina shuru kar diya, khana chu. They don't know you have to wait till 6:40, 6:45. Yeah, there is no information. But now when we do, they know you have to be patient till the time came for the breaking the fast. So this is a small way of engaging, that you need to respect your fellow citizen, what they're practicing, what they're doing. So that is one anecdote I remember, that's works way. And often researcher come to interview me, they say, like for example, she has traveled across the world, but when I say, if you want to really do interview on inclusion, exclusion, you need to come to my area. So it's a Khidirpur, so she was very scared, but she has traveled across the world, and her supervisor actually insisted, to interview me based on some of my writing. So she said, I'll consult with my mom. So I think, you wanted to come to Park Street and I'll treat you. And I said, no, I'll not give you interview. It's not, honestly, it's not me, but you have to come. So after one day, maybe talking to, father is missing, so she has to consult mom only. So, I don't know. But she very reluctantly come, made a moment for, and then we had she visited along with me, taken the interview, people had offered tea, etc. And then we had a nice biryani in India hotel. So I think, what, you're wearing a t-shirt, jeans, what difference you feel as you compare the Park Street? People are more welcoming and say, no, from the very childhood, we are told not to go that area, be cautious. So that kind of, some inbuilt, by design, they say, stereotyping about some. I was talking, many teachers who, there are two colleges, there is school. This has happened who are posted there. So their family members say, one of my good friends, he told that, when I came, they said, leave the area by 3:30. This is not the safe area, etc. So, but he said, through my engagement, I have seen the kind of information they shared outside and what is happening. So it's a government college. They say different between teaching in a presidency college that time and in government degree also. It's different. They're the first generation learner, more warm, want to be learned. And so that is nowhere in the narrative discourse that the girls are more willing to learn from us, and there is no such barriers. But we heard something that you have to return back because there is a possibility of uh, cases of rape, etc. I say, who said, just look at the data. Rape was actually on the street, the kind of, things happened everywhere in the city, including Park Street or Don Bazaar, a crowded place. Women are not spared anywhere, be it metro, etc. But the kind of negativity is, there are certain areas of concern. I say, like for example, it happens with the blacks in America, for example. Uh, like they say they don't follow uh, any laws or order, not wearing helmets, this kind of myth. So that is also applicable to that. It's connected with a low level of education, backwardness. For example, there is a Basti near Saw movie. You'll find they're not the Muslim, but you'll find the same kind of lawlessness, not this, obeying the traffic rules, is connected with some others variables, other traits which contribute. It's not about the religion. So it's became another layer of things. Is like that we have a multiple identity. Like I am a Muslim, I am a Bengali, I have many others identity, but people prefer to only associated us with the religious identity. So, like অনেক সময় বলে যে দেখে তো বোঝা যাচ্ছে না আপনি মুসলিম, so দেখি কি বোঝা যাবে? So this kind of things happen. So I can see, if we discuss, if there is space, that is one area where is the space? Here the theory comes, the politics of presence. If I had an opportunity to be there, I don't have an opportunity to be there in the school. I don't have opportunity to be lawmaker. I am not presented in the government work. I am not in the media. I am not in the film study, film industry, in cultural sense. So I am excluded from all the sphere. So by default, the majority community does not know many nuances of this. So because of that, you'll find if during every Eid, some people will now, because of the rise of the middle class Muslims, some exam will be there on that day. They don't know when is the Eid, and either before or after that day, maybe that day is declared holiday, but they don't know most the Muslim lives in the rural area. Unlike any other state, Assam and Bengal, Muslims lives in the rural area, but rest of the country Muslims live in the city. So they need to travel to celebrate, to see Eid. You just go to the Seattle station, a hugely crowded station now. All the migrant workers are going back to the Musilabag or Malda.
Yeah, for the
But this is not informed because we don't have the presence. When policymakers are also doing, so I was doing a study on the numerous committees from in the assembly. Who are they? I am studying the numerous, more than 200 committees formed, even in this regime. Who are they?
committees on
Committees on different reasons, like information and culture. This has 40 committees. So where you find the Muslim, push them into the Urdu Academy, Hajj House, and that's all. So they don't have expertise on right to information. They don't have right expertise on child rights commission. Although there is one, they don't have the presentation in the women commission and human rights commission. So they are pushed back into the you stay in your own domain.
So, what you talked about, Sabir, is very important. The power of presence and representation, and what the absence of representation in committees, in institutional structural committees, what negative, how adversely it can impact. So, tell me a little bit about this systemically, institutionally, structurally. What are some of the existing laws, policies, if there are processes or practices which are affirmative, which promote inclusion, or which, not by intent, are still promoting exclusion and alienation? If you can talk a little bit about that.
So let's start with why diversity matters. So, a positive sense. Even one very progressive law is right to education.
Right.
That mandates the mandatory participation of the poorer section, disadvantaged group in the school.
Yes.
So, for example, in a very elite institute, if that is implemented, how each learn from each other, you are teaching in a economics class on poverty.
Yeah.
So, in theory, you are teaching that. But if classmates understand what is poverty, as somebody coming from Sundarban is a flood-prone area, lot of vulnerability from different angle, so they can learn from each other if the presence is ensured through the. So what if we make that room, for example, somebody is making law in the assembly or in the parliament. For example, now in the Indian parliament, you're making law about Waqf, Naqf, and no Muslim representation from the ruling incumbent party. So this is a time when the lowest representation in the parliament, and you are formulating one after one law which will affect the minority without their presence. So likewise, in every sense for policy making, making country more viable, more inclusive, you need to ensure that kind of presence. Otherwise, what will happen if you remain backward, that will affect your average. For example, certain groups remain highly illiterate. If you desegregate upper caste Hindu almost 90% literate. But if you combine that Muslim, then the average will be low down. So you need to ensure that kind of participation in every aspect of development. Although in its constitution talk about the diversity, secularism, etc., and reservation for particular social group SC, ST, no further religion. But there are other identity of religious group, for example, minority, they're socially backward. That's why the concept of OBC came into being. If you see the Indian history, most of the Indian Muslims, in particular Bengal, they're converted from Buddhism or Hindu because to escape the oppression of the upper class. So the same feature, same backwardness remains state, but that is not addressed historically. So there come the affirmative action. So affirmative action works very brilliantly, and you can see the example abounds in the South India, for example, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. They have categorized Muslim minority into the OBC category, and you can see their presence in education, in employment, in politics, everywhere. But that was not considered, for example, if we talk about nationally or also in Bengal particular. So that's why some example, for example, during the Sajid Committee report, the participation of the Muslim in the governance, like bureaucrats, etc., it was merely 2%. If you see in the police,
Are you talking about currently?
no, I'm coming to that. But how affirmative action has played a big role, but that's became again a politics. So was- the government has seriously thought, because here after the Mandal Commission, here the government said no, we don't need that. Muslim need not be included there in the OBC list, etc. So there is a lot of opposition, primarily from the upper caste, because this will make a room, this a space for this kind of backward people into their domain. So upper caste hegemony, a middle class hegemony, they don't want to destroy that. So that's why you see all the university, managed, governing council, etc. is largely by they never thought about that. But OBC is a very powerful progressive legislation, and people don't have the data, how that has contributed. But the opposition forces, those the Hindutva identity, now they realize that this will create a more space for these backward communities. Although they have the religious identity, but they are largely socially backward community in all parameters. So the OBC has implemented, the government has started issuing OBC certificate to large scale Muslim, and about 95 to 96% Muslim now cover under the OBC. And it's not permanently assigned, because there is if you once, it become a creamy layer if you got the job, etc. It's unlike the SCSTs. So what happened in the last 10 years, it is showing some good result.
Okay.
If you see from 2.2, the staff census release, although it's closed now, till the 2016-17 is almost 7% Muslim in the governance. Less. In the school teaching, there is a huge opening, 12% school teacher, 8% college professor. So that's a middle class started emerging. They started articulating these voice, and that became a bone of contention. Again, see, you are giving a job to the Muslim, not their social identity group as OBC. So that became a issue of politics. So they filed a case in the High Court. There is a stay order, and that is now pending in the Supreme Court. Although state government just 2 days ago passed new in the cabinet, they have approved, so they want to bring that, but we can see clear especially see the kind of improvement. If you see in the police force, there's a Muslim women will never walk in the because they are all wearing hijab, etc. See the dramatic improvement. Go back to the 2017, 34 women used to work in Kolkata police.
Okay.
And now come to the March, I'm talking of the current data, 2025. 174 Muslim women are now, working in the Kolkata police. And also in the other constable, etc., other posts, there is a dramatic increase. Although the absolute number is not much as compared to, but you can see the percentage wise and the enthusiasm about all these things. And this has contributed to the rise of middle class who are now demanding assertive about the rights, access to the school. Immediately they can, write a complaint letter to the chief minister. These kind of things are happening because of the affirmative action. So those who oppose affirmative action, the positive discrimination, that has a big role to play in a democracy. It is proved elsewhere, it's proved here also. That's why there is a force, they're contesting in the court to, ban this kind of affirmative action. But it has a huge scope for the marginalized communities through the OBC reservation. And you will see the changes. You see the changes where if you go to the profile of the medical student, because of the huge work done by the Muslim-led school, mission school, 20% medical students from the minority community. But again, there is a catch. I was just studying who are the faculty member who runs the hospital. There you will find, ridiculously low number. For example, go to the Calcutta Medical College. 267 is the faculty member. 7 is the only Muslim. Because that is the center of power. I control. And you see the 23 medical college, there is no vice principal who that's from the community. But now, because of our data analysis, people can actually argue. I was presenting in an iftar party by all medical college students and etc. So they give me 5 minutes. I say, when you're talking about the medical profession, we talk about the humanitarian aspect of the medical. So we don't see, they say, we don't see the religion background. We have taken oath to treat people. But in Bengal, people say, if you are from the Bangladesh, will not treat you. There is a declaration after the Bangladesh crisis. Bangladesh A, so whose religions, I don't know to say, it's obvious they're the from the certain community. So for sometimes you choose that kind of, narrative, but when you're talking about the, you're talking about the humanitarian aspect, that's all fine. But when the participation of the minority in the decision making, because you need to, there is another aspect of research, many are the biases among the doctors regarding the overwhelmingly patients coming from the who can't afford for going to the private, because they are the main client in the poor Muslims are the main client, almost 80% Muslim who attend in the medical college, etc. And but those who cannot afford, they can go to the private school. Even because of that design, the sex ratio among the Muslim is very pretty well, because they can't afford to natal examinations, because if you have money you can go outside. And but they said, only the government hospital is the only. So some practices like very good, which we never highlighted. One is the health hygiene practices among the Muslim neighborhood. Even we did a analysis based on the national sample, like so they are also so, because every mosque has by default a oju khana, piped up kind of an arrangement for the water, cleanliness, etc. So that are by tradition, that are some healthy practices. Presence-wise representation is, see for example in the assembly, in the parliament, as compared to there is no reservation. In Kolkata, at some point, there are 7 MLAs used to be representing in there. Kolkata Corporation, for example, 51% Muslim used to be, because of the Chittaranjan Das Bengal Pact. They have proactively ensured the participation of Muslim in the corporation body. That has drastically reduced after the partition. Still, only 1,000 something is out of total 16,000 employee in corporation. Still, that is long way to go to ensure. If you see the higher education institute, because of the OBC, some representation will increase, but not in the faculty, not in the VC list. In the commission, you will not find that. So you'll find there is a huge mismatch between
The intent of the policies, but it's still not in action. That's what you're saying. So we spoke about the significance of affirmative action. Some of it still being in theory, not completely in practice. So if we come to know your neighbor, if we come to the initiative that you've started, Sabir, what are some of the very concrete or everyday, simple actions, examples, like micro level actions that you're doing through this movement that actually integrates the Muslim youth with the rest of the city. So you were in the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about how certain events are done in these segregated geographies in Kolkata, where you're inviting and for dialogues and discussions. So if you can share a little bit about how are the youth groups in these communities, what are some of the micro actions or examples of activities for the other way around, I mean, young Muslim youth to be able to interact, interface
Right.
with the rest of the city?
Yeah. I think that is the outcomes we can experience after the like engagement with the youth. So somebody say I don't have any friend outside Khidirpur. Now I have a friend. I know I can visit somebody in the Hajra. I can visit somebody in the Wakawalipur. So building the bridge, and then from there, see that group actually. Some of the girls said that because of the something discouragement from our family that don't attend any puja or anything. So we have never been to any Durga Puja pandal for say. So can't we experience that? So we started Dosti Ki Utsav. Okay, so as a group wearing that hijab, we are not asking them to reject that. Pointing to, and then they invited the friends from the Babanipur to come to our houses. It's a society run Durga Puja sometimes. So they said, in this manner, we are coming to celebrating Utsav. Not I'm offering any pujas, it's a arti, but I'm coming to celebrate with my friends. So finding new friends.
Simple thing, just to
Simple.
have a friend in another pin code.
Or I've never seen the temples. We get so much detail. I've studied histories, they said, but I've heard about the terracotta. But the usage of terracotta in a temples in a North Calcutta, we have never experienced. I read in the text. So that is the kind of things, and also where culture assimilates. So that we got to know through this intervention. For example, there is a 200 years over the 200 years old mosque in North Calcutta is called Niamatullah Ghat Masjid. From there, the Nimtala Ghat came. So there is one old mandir and one mosque, and the usage of terracotta both in mosque and in mandir. So the culture of syncretism, and then one day we found how we united by river also. So all the mosques along the river Ganga. So at some point, people, water from Ganga used to come for the Oju Khana, Sai Masjid in Metiaburuj, Niamutullah Ghat in North Calcutta. So they have the similarity that that time water was also pure, not like today's Ganga. So it is used for both purpose. And one anecdote like the founder of the Niamutullah Ghat Masjid, Ramjan, is saying in a note that Muslim youth are throwing water to the Brahmin, so they got scared. I can't perform puja. So he's a moneyed person. He's constructed some space for them to before going to the puja. So a Muslim is taking initiative to create a space for the, so that kind of narratives, culture of syncretic, that is one other purpose of the interactive multiculturalism, how that works. So as a part of that, many youth participated in last year. Almost more over 500 even from the other cities they participated from the different angle.
So you're using a lot of storytelling, culture.
So, like one, the confluence of culture module in from Jacare ST to Senegal. So we tell the stories when we see the intense fight between Israel and Palestine. Many Muslim, like four Muslim through generation are taking care of Senegal in Kolkata. Kader Mia, he is the one of the in charge of the Senegal situated in Canning Street. So, and within the walk of 2 kilometers, you'll find the presence of 7 religions, if they can, and also within the community, like there are Bora Muslims, they never allowed us to go inside the mosque. But then we convinced that more you hide, you know, it will create more suspicion. So then why don't you allow? So then they also allowed even on the non-Muslims are going inside the Bora Masjid Muslim. So different division within the community. For example, there is a beautiful Imam Bara. There the Sia Mosque in Golkoti Imam Bara in Golkoti Imam Bara in Rabindra Sadan, Bawali Koti Imam Bara. All old structure is still there, but from outside you can't see what is inside. Pulsate fire temples. So that within the walk of 2 kilometers, so you will got to know this. This became a most powerful module, and people started and then say these are all not religious structure only. Then see culturally what is the food is a binding thing. So in a food walk, for example, Adam kebab was very popular. Suti kebab, beef kebab. So we did a food walk also. Then
So these are done with young people, or this is open?
sometimes open, but they open. There is one limitations. The gray-haired people used to give more lecture than listening to the story of the people. So, and there is certain type of people they used to come if it is an open call, and they know everything. So that's become difficult for the others people. And in our work, we involve the community people. For example, if you're talking about Unani Dawakhana in there, if you're talking about the Islamic hotel, they has the pre-independence origin, so they'll come and discuss with the people. If you're talking about the Nakoda Masjid, the member of the family will come and explain. If you talk about the library, library, that Ramayana Mahabharata in Urdu is still kept. So this kind of syncretic culture we promote, and this is the only library who hosts. And so there, this Ramayana and Mahabharata. So there must be some reader demand at time. So we demonstrate all that, and couple of interesting development has happened, especially on food and culture. So we started talking, people started talking about these, writing about this. So one very nondescript bakery in Mobilkuri scale bakery. Okay, so they used to bake German bread. So I, and Bakar Khani, etc. So we started two programs. One is with breakfast with Bakar Khani. So, and Bakar Khani, and when this came into the news, some very old lady called me. She said, "You have brought me into the 60 years ago. I was used to live in a Jasur, and every morning somebody, some vendors, street hawkers, say, Bakar Khani, and I heard this term after so many years. So I arranged to send some Bakar Khani to her, very old lady, and this Kale Bakery, they produce Bakarkhani and German bread. So, what is the story behind German bread? So, during the Second World War, so they used to bake to like some amount of German bread, and that was available only during the blackout, like in the evening 2 hours on the open forum. So that remains. So we started talking first, writing that, and then it was marked on the Google map. So they became the heritage group, marked them as a heritage bakery, and they was also awarded. How we also contributed to the community in terms of recognize some of the foods item, which some food, some languages are always associated with certain communities. So when you're coming about the language, like largely people tended to associated language with Urdu, Arabic, Farsi. During COVID, we started this language course with the non-Muslims. So this time during Dosti Ki Iftar, non-Muslim girls who's a rich student, she recited a whole verse from Quran without any hiccup. And I said after somebody from Greece, Ghosh, who translated Quran from Arabic to Bangla, after that there is no discussion, no regular reading of academic activities on that. but she learned and she's reciting like any train thing. Another girls who on Independence Day in a very famous school, she recited some poems for famous poem in Urdu. So that's kinds of the impact you could see. ये language किसी के बाप का नहीं है. It's for everyone. Like the countries.
I really like this. I mean, you've combined food, health, medicine, art and poetry, and
I've spoken about the music.
oh, okay.
So, one very interesting narratives about it. During the research we have found is not written here, but we are starting to writing all this thing. I have written some parts in a different newspaper. Gaharjan, who's a famous musician,
Gaharjan, yeah.
her, house is very close to the Nakoda Mosque. So they are in the mode of expanding that, and in the realizing that it's a mosque in a religious places. So she volunteered to give her space, but the committee said no, will not take it free of cost. You have to take some more. So there is a tussle between that. So even one reason was that like in Islam, those are musicians treated it badly. It's like oh, we don't want to take her earning, So but they could not expand that. Even the incompleteness is still there. You'll see the some part is broken and then Nakoda is so many years, almost closing to 100 years. So Gaharjan is on that particular incident, music related. And you see in the Chakari estate, what about the music? Do you know Bismillah Khan's daughter is married to somebody in Kolkata and she's still alive? So you said that, and also those who play different instrument in MG Row, they actually lives in Jakaristic neighborhood. So in MG Road, you'd find also this is on the verge of extinction that band party Sanai. Those who play Sanai in the in
Weddings and
weddings etc.
yes.
They are by large from the Muslim community. So they live
Bring up these narratives and stories.
but if you ask somebody, there is no association with the music. Is there are Sufi callis, the different genre altogether, they practice, etc. But that are overlooked, not in the main discourse of any academic or any media discourse. So I see this interaction, introducing others' culture, will reduce. It will reduce the ignorance. It will build the more associational bonds, and the problem we are facing, that will contribute in a bigger way to knowing.
Absolutely. You've picked up food, you've picked up arts, music, you've picked up healthcare, you've picked up talking about the forgotten stories. I really like this thing that you've used so many mediums to build these bridges between the Muslim communities, especially the youth from these communities with the other young people outside these areas. So whether it is food, whether it is music, art, stories, scriptures, talking about history, architecture, festivals. I think it's a beautiful way of ensuring that there is more dialoguing, more sharing, more inclusivity, not only as a checkbox, but as a value system. So I think that's really very heartening to hear. So, as we come towards the end, I wanted to ask a couple of more questions. That if you had to give a single piece of advice to an individual who is struggling with, say, alienation or feeling disconnected, I'm not like them, they are not like me. Is tarah ka, if there is this kind of a feeling of alienation and they come to you, uh, what could be your single piece of advice to that person, to that young person?
Yeah. Sometimes it's really distressing, such situation. Mentally, sometimes we also feel, emotionally, it's very challenging how to overcome this kind of illness. I think the most important part, I think, we need a space just to articulate, just to cry, just to share what we think. So that space is lacking. You give some patient hearing, so who will listen? We have many histories, many narratives, many personal stories to tell, and they can connect with a larger picture, but space is missing. So that's why we started a place called Chair for the Reader.
Okay.
So that is a place you come. You don't have to. You just read, and we organize book discussion. So Neha Dixit just recently came. She was writing a book called Life of Saida X, and book reading usually happen in Park Street area, but this is happening in Mominpur slum area. And the girls from the Metropolis, every sentence they can connect with what the author is sharing about the character. So, and then they started, connecting. So this emotionally very relieving that we know somebody has, this is the space we can, express, especially the women sections, those are facing, they are in search of such space. How, one example, during Ramzan, now you will find more congregation of the women, long prayer time in the evening. So I say, what happens? Why you are organizing, they say, Subah mein I have to cook. Say, yeah, a male will only eat. Ramzan, during the iftar, I will be husband using by 10. I'll be only, this is the space I actually can honor places. Come pray and also discuss our all this story. So space is very important. We need to create that space to listen. I think this is the thing. Yet more you discuss, there are more ways to find the beauty of living together.
Yeah. I this living together. I was facilitating a session with elderly people, and there is an aunt of mine who was there in that space, and we had asked them to talk about one memory from their childhood that they carry they really value, and they even today it's a sound or a smell or a taste that they value even today. And this aunt of mine, she said, the azan. And I was like, really? She said, I have grown up. My youth has been, in a place where, and so even today I am 78 years old. But even today, when I hear the azan, I know that I'm home. And so I know what you mean, Sabir. The more there is spaces of discussion, sharing, expression, what you said, expression, I think more bridges will be built, more connections will be made, and alienation will be broken. So I will leave you with the last question. If you could choose one song or a soundtrack or a poem that to you really holds the essence of inclusion, what could that be?
A couple of Bengali poems, for example, written by Rabindranath Tagore. এই মহামানবের সাগর তীরে I'm not good at but so that is one connects me. It's a space for everyone, so we can connect. And also one Hindi song, sometimes it's I नाम मैं हिंदू हूँ मुसलमान I'm इंसान हूँ, kind of some a very old song. So that's I'm not good at I'm singing.
Good. I get the essence of the thing. I mean, thank you so much, Samir, for sharing so many personal nuggets, so many personal experiences. And I really think you're a very optimistic person. And that energized me very much in this conversation because, you've constantly come up with data and you've come up with anecdotes, stories, and solutions. How is it that we can do this together? So I'm very, very grateful that you came today. And thank you so much for coming to Inclusion by Design.
Thank you.
So that was the episode with Mr. Sabir Ahmed on Inclusion by Design. Like I keep saying, inclusion is not a lofty ideal. It is something that we do every day with commitment, with intent. Inclusion in action. Till the next conversation. See you in the next episode.